Recording.
Right. It'll be great.
Hi, Lee.
Hi.
Okay, like without the further ado, I already started the recording. Okay, so without further ado, let's start. Today we have the last like webinar of the year, like not academic year though. Um, the welcome everyone. Today we have a Jungeum Kim. She is an associate, no, assistant. So
I want to
recently
be.
joined. Okay, so you will be, right? So assistant professor in statistics at the North Carolina State University, and she will talk about the mixing rates of oh, I forgot oh God. Okay, so she will talk about the mixing the rates of for the Bayesian CART. Thank you. Like your title, the page has the title. Okay, so the Jongam, the floor is yours, and yeah, take it from
Thank
here.
you so much, Joey. Yeah, I'm so excited that I can present here, and thank you so much for inviting me. As she mentioned, my name is Jeong-eun Kim, and I'm a new assistant professor at NC State University. And I did my postdoc at Chicago booth, and Veronica Rokova was my postdoc advisor. And she introduced me into the world of Bayesian research, and I'm very happy that she did it. And also, I'm very grateful for this academic heritage. And yeah, so today, like actually, this work is my first Bayesian research. And when I was working on it, I found that Bayesian research is something actually very fun and interesting. And I want to share with you guys what was that interesting to me. And okay, let's get started. First, I will share some background on it. So I think BART is one of the most famous Bayesian machine learning algorithm, and its full name is Bayesian Additive Regression Tree. So it is regression tree. So there is a tree, and a tree is a regression. And it is additive. So we add up some trees to make a forest. Now we have more complex regression. And now it is Bayesian. So once we give some prior on the tree, then we will have Bayesian additive regression tree. And because understanding its mixing property is pretty challenging, so we decided that we focus on a single tree as a starting point of this line of research. And actually, this single tree has a name as Bayesian classification regression tree, Bayesian CART. And I first want to classify what I meant by that a tree is a regression. How can it be? Actually, I think most of you already know that I was referring to a binary tree, a data structure. So, and there is actually a very interesting connection between a binary tree and a partitioning mechanism of a space. Let's consider a two-dimension situation. When I split a binary tree, I will specify a dimension to which direction I cut it. Then actually, it one split process is related to a split of the space to that direction. Here I split with x, so here it divides into two, and here x. again to X, and Y here. So then each external node here would represent each small bin on this partition. So when we know a binary tree, actually it's like that we know a partition. But actually when we know a partition, we do not know the corresponding binary tree because here the order may affect which tree would represent this. While partition itself does not have that order information. So in this work, we will again narrow down our focus on the one-dimensional situation. Here now we don't need to specify which direction we cut. And now again, each external node would represent each bin here. So now we have one-to-one relationship. So then with that tree, so far we have a partition, but how can we make a regression out of it? So we can simply consider a jump on each bin. Then it makes a step function. And I think a step function is a very scary function class because it looks very simple, but it can approximate any measurable function. So it's actually very non-parametric modeling. And so here, now we have a regression, and we have a tree with a prior, then we have prior, and we have likelihood. So we can define a posterior. And this posterior has been studied very well, that it has very nice property like concentration or spatial adaptivity and things like that. But now the question is that when I'm actually analyzing my data, I want to make an inference by sampling trees out of this posterior, and it seems not easy because the state space is not just a simple continuous space, but it's a tree space, and it looks like not typical situation. So in this scenario, what is most often used is the Metropolis-Hastings algorithm. So that its sampling distribution is defined in this way. First, we propose some tree from the current tree location. And then with a certain acceptance probability, we accept a new proposal. And this proposal distribution is defined in this way here. First, we need to choose with probability 0.5 which movement we will do. So grow movement means that we add up new internal node. And prune movement means we cut out one existing internal node. And so once the movement is decided, we uniformly choose among all the possible candidates here. And that's the way how we can navigate, this chain can navigate within the space of trees. So because it's MH algorithm, it will be not too much challenging to show that this sampling distribution would in the end converge to the true posterior distribution. But the question is how fast or how slow this process will be. So if it takes 100 years, it will not be a so much fun situation. So a good algorithm would have a fast convergence. And so our question is, what is the convergence speed of this algorithm? And that's the question of mixing rate. So in the literature, people have empirically found that it can be actually very slow, so that there were many efforts to improve this mixing rate by proposing new movements or new initializations. And when we are working on this paper, there was a provoking paper that actually says that this mixing rate can be exponentially slow. So we want to investigate more on this matter. And our key message is that, yeah, it can be slow, but it can be also fast. And it actually depends on the data structure. So let me first summarize our contribution in this work. So we divide the data structure into two exclusive but comprehensive ways. So for one type, the original Bayesian CART can mix actually very rapid, while on the other data type, it can be slow. So in order to overcome this data structure dependence on the data structure, we will propose a new movement, and we will establish rapid mixing rate for both of data structure. And there is an informed variation of MH algorithm, and we will see what kind of improvement it can bring. In order to help the presentation, I will use an analogy of monkey and Spider-Man and its informed version having an eyeglass. And yeah, so that we can have more intuition about what's going on here. Okay, now I move on to setting offs. So for this work, we will use the tree-shaped wavelet reconstruction. So if we see this hard wavelet basis, like the orthogonal hard wavelet basis with a dilation and translation, like their structure looks like the exact like binary tree. And one thing interesting is that when we have this binary tree here at the right side, actually, wavelet can be used to express the same function that can be expressed by using this binary tree. So when we have this one, we can simply select only the bases that correspond to the internal nodes. Then we can do linear combination of these to make the same jump function, step function. Now, the question is that if they are essentially the same, why should we be bothered by using wavelet, not just like this, like much simpler, like tree structure? The reason is because if we look at this tree representation, our interest goes to the external node, because on external node, each external node, we make a jump, and that makes a step function. But when it comes to the wavelet, as you see, our interest is in the internal node because we need to make a linear combination of these things. Therefore, it really helps us to think of the internal structural relationship among the internal nodes or among the signals. That's the reason I think that's the benefit of using this wavelet representation. So now we introduce the model. So this is a regression model, and so the true regression function is defined as a linear combination of the wavelet basis, where if beta is non-zero, then it is regarded as a signal. And we consider equally spaced x as data, and between 0 and 1. And so actually this one can be modeled by using simple linear regression when we use a design matrix X, where each column is the evaluated wavelet basis. So now I will define the prior. So we use tree-shaped wavelet shrinkage prior. So we have a tree prior here, and we have a shrinkage model for the coefficients. And for the tree prior, we use Galton-Watson process. So here, when a tree is growing, essentially it's a node splitting process. So in this process, decides whether to split a node or not by using a Bernoulli probability. And for the coefficients, we use the simplest G prior so that we can later easily compute the posterior or integrate it out. And then we also have a likelihood here. And I think what is important is that the likelihood has a penalty term here with respect to the size of the tree. This is the number of external nodes. And also, likelihood will increase if the residual is smaller. Now, by using these things, we can define a posterior. Now, I will share the assumption of our work. The assumption is essentially on the intensity of the signal. And I think this blue part, the lower bound, is important. So when we have a certain strength of signal, what we can show is that, so I first need to define the true tree. So we define the true tree as the smallest tree that contains all the signals. And with that strength assumption, what we can show is that the posterior will be concentrated on the true tree. And actually, when it comes to the context of a variable selection, which does not consider the tree shape restriction, actually, it also have the same consistency result, but with much smaller signal strength condition. And the reason is because for us, like let's say that the V1 and VL, those two are true signals. But for the variable selection, they only need to grab the two things. But for us, like because of the tree shape restriction, when we include VL, we also should include all these unnecessary noise in between. And then, so that should be covered. Even after including it, there should be still like increase of the posterior. So that's the reason why we have square root log n times more of the signal strength requirement. And with that, actually, there can be only two scenarios that the true signals, the signals would, signals themselves be a tree or not. There will be only two cases, and the first case will be equivalent that all the signals are connected within the true tree, and the other case is that the signals are disconnected. So it's a little bit of simplified situation. So I will show an example how this data structure would look like. So in this disconnected signal, we have all noise, but at the bottom, because of the deepest node, suddenly we have a spike here. And for the connected signals, some meaningful signals are kind of connected to each other. That's how the data would look like. And finally, I would like to define the mixing time. So this is the sampling distribution, which was initialized at a certain tree, and this is a sampling distribution at time t. And what we want is that in the end, this sampling distribution becomes very similar to the target posterior distribution. And so we define the total variation distance between them. And then if we continue sampling, in the end, the distance will decrease, and there will be the first moment where it will be less than epsilon. And this is the moment that we want to capture, but we also want to consider the worst case scenario, which means the worst case initialization. And then this time is defined as epsilon mixing time. And this is the quantity that we are interested in, whether we want to know whether we can upper bound it or lower bound it. Okay, now I want to move on to the theoretical result. So basically, I will share the result on three different algorithms. The first one is the original Bayesian CART algorithm, and the other ones are some variations that we proposed or considered in this work. So first, like Bayesian CART algorithm. So to remind us, like this has two movements, grow and prune, and which is very local movement because we add one, we either add or cut one node at one time. So there is a good news: when the signals are connected, we can have a rapid mixing rate. So in our situation, the number of variables p is 2 to the power of L. So that is here. So this mixing rate upper bound is polynomial to the number of problem parameters. So it is regarded as a rapid mixing. And another thing is that I want to mention is that compared to just variable selection, we have only n here, while the variable selections mixing rate upper bound has n square n. So we have some discount here. So this is a good mixing property. But there is a bad news. If we have a disconnected signal structure, then we can grab some very unfortunate F0 that can have a very bad mixing rate lower bound. So because this is the log of our problem parameter, so this is a super polynomial, and so it can be regarded as a slow mixing. And actually, then what is that unfortunate like F0? That actually looks like this. As the single isolated signal goes deeper, the situation will become worsen. And I want to explain, okay, so to summarize it, when the signals are connected, we have a rapid mixing, and when these are not connected, we have slow mixing. So I want to explain first why that happened by using some analogy to have some intuition before we jump into more technical details. So when we have a type, the connected signal structure, it is like that we have a monkey jumping between trees, having full of apples on the tree. So if this tree is equivalent to the root tree, having only one node, essentially the movement of the chain from the root node to the full tree is like that. The monkey is jumping between different trees while the chain increases the tree size. So let us see how the monkey moves. The monkey jumps to add one additional node. So monkey jumps to the next tree, jump. And then because of the trouble, it became hungry. So there is an apple. So it eats up an apple. And then it was recovered. The monkey was recovered and happy. So it has a courage to jump to the next tree. And then it became again hungry because of the trouble. So it eats up the apple. And then it jumps to the next tree, which is the target true tree. But this happens when the signals are connected. But when the signals are disconnected, we have these like noisy nodes, which are hungry trees without apple. So what happens is that the monkey jumps to the next tree and it became hungry, but there's no apple. So with all patience and endurance, the monkey decided to jump to the next tree, but there is no apple again. So it became super, super hungry and cannot bear it anymore. So the monkey decides to go back. Like this. And although this analogy seems like funny, but I think this is very relevant to our situation about what was really going on. It's like in our MH algorithm, what was really important was this acceptance rate. And this acceptance rate is affected by this posterior ratio. So if the newly proposed tree has higher posterior, then it will be more likely to be accepted. And how is posterior computed? Like it's proportional to the prior and likelihood, where both likelihood and prior has a size penalty of the tree, and likelihood would have some increase when there is extra signal that is explained. So when the signals are connected, like when the monkey is like the chain is adding the one extra node here, although there is a size penalty, still there is a likelihood increase that can cover that loss of the penalty value. And because of that, it can have a high acceptance rate. So the chain will not have difficulty to grow so much until it reaches to the full tree, full true tree. But when it comes to this like disconnected tree, disconnected signal, when the chain begins from here, now when it adds up, there the acceptance rate is very small. And again, the acceptance rate is very small. And again, so until in order to obtain or add the true deep signal tree, it needs to go through the sequential acceptance of a very low acceptance rate. And I think that's the intuition why that very slow mixing rate happens. So now I would like to share some proving techniques that we used for this. And we used something called the spectral gap. So I think this is a magical number. So P is the transition matrix. And so the gap is defined by using the eigenvalues of this matrix. And when the chain is ergodic, what we know is that this mixing time can be both upper bounded and lower bounded by using this magical number gap. And in order to make our chain as ergodic, we want to make it as acyclic, so we made it as a lazy version. Then what we can also get out of this lazy version is that now the gap depends only on the second largest eigenvalue. And before I actually apply to our situation, I want to share a little bit of intuition that why this bound depends on this mixing time depends on this magical number gap. And like if we think about the transition matrix, because if in the end it will go to the stationary distribution, then we multiply it many times, it will go to that. That means that within the process, the eigenvalues will be multiplied many times and it will go to 0. So this is the largest eigenvalue. So if that is large, then the convergence will be very slow. And if that is small, then convergence will be fast. And I think that's the reason why this gap is kind of affecting that much on the convergence speed. Okay, now the technique that we are using to show the upper bound was a canonical path. So this is a way of bounding this gap, the inverse of gap. So this uses some canonical path ensemble. So it is a set of simple paths between any existing pairs on the state space. And what is simple path? So when we have an adjacency graph that is made by transition matrix, we can kind of come up with any kind of path between two trees without having a loop. And then it is called a simple path. So there are two important quantities that controls the upper bound of gap. That is the length of the longest path in the ensemble. And the second one is path congestion parameter, which I will explain more about it. And we will construct an ensemble, the set of simple passes that will resemble the simple path that was constructed by the previous work on variable selection. The idea is that the path should always target to go through the true tree. And yeah, so I will explain more on it later. So like the congestion parameter has a very interesting intuition. So this is the definition, but I will focus on explaining this upper bound. So this has three important components. The first one is that, so okay, so I think I first need to explain about this analogy. This is really about how trafficy or congested the one road can be. This is the worst scenario road. And when we are moving on this simple path. So let's think about one tree T here. And this delta T is all the precedents that goes through this route. And then if there are so many cars, trees that pass through this route, then it will be more congested, right? So the congestion parameter is controlled by this posterior rate of the trees that go through this route. And the second one is that anyway, in order for a tree to go through it, this edge should be proposed. So if this specific edge is proposed more often, then we will have much less congestion. And even if it is proposed, if it is not accepted, then it's not useful. So a higher acceptance rate will also reduce the congestion parameter. And so now I will explain how we constructed the canonical path or simple path within the ensemble that we made. So when a tree is overfitting, then we will cut the tree so that we will prune the tree so that it can come near to the true tree. And a tree is underfitting, we will grow a tree so that it can again come near to the true tree. So in a sense, we are kind of making a posterior shape by using this canonical path. So here, when it is overfitting, like as it is cutting, pruning toward the true tree, the posterior increases. When it is underfitting, as we are adding more nodes, the posterior increases again. So in this way, we can control the congestion parameter because this posterior rate and acceptance rate will be improved. Yeah, and this is the case when it is the data structure has connected signals. Because when the data signals are disconnected, what can happen is that while we are going toward the truth tree, we need to go through this harsh, hungry trees, so that during that time, the posterior should decrease, and there is no way of this decrease of posterior. So this canonical path argument is not useful in this situation. And now I will explain then instead how we show the really bad lower bound for this case. We essentially use the bottleneck idea, bottleneck ratio bound. So like, let's say that this is the true deep signal of this tree. And in order for a chain to reach to obtain this deep signal, anyway, it needs to obtain at one moment this green internal node first. So any chain that really wants to have it first need to go through this green node. So there happens a super serious bottleneck here, and by using that bottleneck, we can show the super polynomial lower bound. Okay, so now I will explain our new movement idea to overcome this scenario, these disconnected signals. So the idea is simple. We will just fly. So instead of adding and cutting one single node, we will add and cut a twig. So a twig means a tree that has only one node on each level. So it, in a sense, it generalizes the original local movement, but it has more flexibility. And the other things are all the same. What we can show with this new movement is that now, for both connected and disconnected data structure, we can have the same polynomial mixing upper bound. And intuitively, why it works is that now we don't need to go through these hungry trees. Instead of going through this area, we can just fly directly to obtain an instant reward of this increased posterior. So in terms of the canonical path language, like the previously broken canonical path is now recovered because now we just fly. So the same argument, canonical path technique can be used with our new algorithm, and that's how we showed it. Now, before we move to the inferred version, I want to explain why then we chose to use this twig movement instead of using more general movement. Because if making the movement more general is better, then a way more general method will be just allowing to add or cut any general shape of trees. But here, the reason why we chose twig was to control congestion parameter. I remind that we have another component in this congestion parameter where in order to control congestion parameter very small, the proposal probability should be not very small. And when it comes to, because right now we are proposing by using the uniform distribution, if the pool is too large, then this one will be uncontrollable. But the size of any possible trees is exponentially super large. But when it comes to the number of twigs, it's at best it's equivalent to the maximum tree size, because when we have any full size tree, whenever we grab any single node here, we can identify a single unique route to go to the root. So it really defines the twig, and therefore the number of twig is equivalent to the maximum tree size. So it's more manageable. So to summarize, we had monkey movement, the original movement, and that had rapid mixing rate for the connected signal, but slow mixing rate for the disconnected signals. And when we instead fly by using the twig movement, we can have rapid mixing for both type of trees. data structure. Now I move to the inferred MCMC. So what that means is that previously all these algorithms were proposed by using the uniform distribution, so which is essentially just random walk. But now in this inferred version, before proposing, we will look around, like wearing an eyeglass or binoculars, and look around and where is better to see where is better, and then we propose there more. That's the idea of informed variation. So here, when it comes to choosing the movement type, it's still like uniform choice. Just with probability 0.5, we will choose a movement. But once the movement is chosen, then we, among all possible candidates, we will propose more often the tree that has higher posterior probability. So yeah, so essentially it weights based on the rate of the posterior probabilities between the new proposed tree and existing tree. But here is a threshold that is made by this work. And why I want to explain why we need a threshold. So because we use MH algorithm, which uses the acceptance rate, the transition probability does not depend only on the proposal probability, but also the proposal probability to the backward direction. So this is a forward direction from my existing tree to a new tree. But also we need to have some large probability that this can come back. The chain can come back from the new tree to the original one. But if from new tree's perspective, if there is a much better candidate that has a super large posterior, then it will not be willing to propose the original tree. So then the entire probability can be very small. And to prevent this, they are using the threshold so that even the good candidate would not seem to be really, really good, but good, something like that. So with that improved, with that inferred variation, what we can show is that when we use this Twiggy algorithm, we can have a linear mixing rate because this is our problem parameter, number of problem parameters, so it's linear here. And when we use the uninferred version, I think it's quadratic, so it's a significant improvement here. But when it comes to the monkey version, the original movement, actually even after being inferred, it still has like super polynomial lower bound because actually when it is moving very locally, one node by one node, that bottleneck that was made when we that I showed there that I showed before, that bottleneck structure will be consistent there because that bottleneck was made because of the posterior structure, not because that the proposal this probability was bad. And I want to share how the improved upper bound was proven. So it's based on the drift condition technique. And I think this is a very interesting idea. And so the key idea of this drift condition is like this. We want to know whether our chain will in the end enter to a desirable set A. And what it thinks is that, okay, if the chain will really flow to a certain direction, then we should be able to find some function v called the drift function, which will have much smaller expected function value for the next step of the chain compared to the original function value at the initial place, something like that. And I think that's the intuition of this drift condition. And when we are given a tree, when we are given a chain, once we can find such a drift function v, then what we can know is that the probability that the chain will not still enter to a desirable set A until time t would decrease exponentially. So when it comes to our situation, our desirable target is the true tree. So we can apply this notion by making A as the set of true tree. And if we can find such a V, what we know is that the total variation distance would decrease again exponentially. And by using that, we can show the mixing rate. So now our goal is that, okay, we have an informed algorithm. How, like, we want to find such a V that will satisfy these conditions so that we can know that it will, in the end, converge very fast. And intuitively, it should not be very difficult. If we think about this informed algorithm first, it's MH algorithm. So anyway, the acceptance rate would kind of favor the candidate that has a higher posterior value. And second, we made the proposal to favor those who have higher posterior probability. So in a sense that this algorithm is doubly kind of promoting the trees having high posterior. So we can easily imagine that this algorithm will flow toward trees with high posterior. And we know that at the beginning I shared the consistency result, which says that the true tree will have the highest posterior probability. So then how can we design this V? Because the V should show that the chain will have a tendency to decrease V. So we can simply design a V that will have an opposite tendency from the posterior. So when the posterior is decreasing, we can design a V that will increase instead. So to explain a little more detail, actually, we used two drift condition that was first proposed by this work. And actually, while I was reading it, I learned about drift condition first time. And the idea is this: in our situation, yeah, even if the chain began from underfit, probably it will have a strong tendency of adding more node to escape underfit situation. So that kind of tendency can be explained by finding some good V1, first drift function. And once the chain escapes the underfitting situation, then because it will regard the redundant node as like kind of waste of probability, it will try to reduce its tree size to escape overfit situation and by coming near to the true tree. So that tendency can be explained by finding a proper drift function V2. So in our work, so when the chain is escaping the underfit, we to explain this phenomenon, we designed the first drift function that has a positive relationship with the residual. And to explain the overfit escape situation, we designed the second drift function to have the positive relationship with the size penalty of the tree. And by using these two drift functions, we can show that it satisfies the drift condition. And so, yeah, by using this, we showed the improved upper bound. And now I move to experiment. So in this presentation, I will focus on the example data I showed before, and more detailed like analysis with real data will be in the paper. So like let us remind it of the data. So this has the right side is about the disconnected signal, and the left side is about the connected signal. And as a proxy of mixing time, here I will be just showing the heating time of the true tree. So, and we will first compare with a simple variable selection algorithm with a spike slap prior. So in this case, what we can show is that like if so in this variable selection scenario, they do not have knowledge that the data structure actually have a tree shape. So what we can see is that when further connected signals, the original Bayesian CART algorithm shows much shorter heating time. But when it comes to deep hidden signal, as this hidden deep isolated signal goes deeper and deeper and deeper, actually the heating time increases really rapidly. This is the log scale, so this is really rapid increase of the heating time. So now let us think about the Twiggy proposal. So one added method here, TW, is the Twig algorithm. And now, even when it comes to fully connected signals, there are some kind of improvements here by using the Twiggy movement. But I think what is more important is the improvement when it comes to deep single, when it comes to deep disconnected signal. So yeah, so as the signal gets deeper, but in the increase of the heating time does not get really bad like the Bayesian CART algorithm. Now let us check then how much improvement an informed version can bring. So this is Twiggy algorithm and the pink is informed Twiggy, and this is Bayesian CART algorithm, and the green is informed Bayesian CART. So what we can see is that for each algorithm, either Bayesian CART or Twiggy algorithm, the informed variation brings an improvement. But when it comes to the deep isolated signal, the behavior, the improvement looks different. Like when it comes to Bayesian CART, actually, even after using the informed version, the improvement is a little bit marginal. But when it comes to the Twiggy version, the improvement is substantial. And I think here is very substantial because in the informed version, it can just look everywhere, and once it grabs the true signal at once, it is done. So it's a little bit dramatic, but it was, yeah, how it was like at the time. And yeah, so this was our contribution. So let me summarize. So for the informed movement, what we saw is that there is an improvement, but the improvement of the local movement of monkey can be marginal. So now let me summarize today's talk. So the original Bayesian CART algorithm of that adding or cutting only one node at one time can be a little bit to local movement. And so therefore its mixing rate can depend on the data structure. And so we proposed the Twiggy movement so that this more global movement actually helps to improve the dependence on the data structure. And by using the informed version, actually, we could see some kind of improvement. So yeah, thinking about where to go before actually taking a step seems to be important thing. Okay, guys, and yeah, I'm very thankful for my postdoc advisor for her guidance during my postdoc time. And yeah, that's my presentation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Jungeum.
much.
I'm here. I just wanted to thank you for what a wonderful, collaboration this has been for me. And so really, you don't have to really thank me too much. It's been your work, and I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Veronica.
Okay, thanks for the wonderful talk, Jungeum. And now, it's time for the questions. And is there anyone has a question who has questions?
Sure.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Great job. Great. Very, very interesting. The Twiggy move uh, seems like a very good idea. But one thing I was concerned about, because we considered it, but it's important for these Markov chains to be reversible. So the proposal has to be reversible. Now, cutting off a branch that's an easy step. But what is the reverse of that? So how do you the reverse has to be how do you get to all the different possibilities? How can you reverse it? And maybe you know the answer, but I don't.
Well, I don't understand why moving with a twig would hurt reversibility, because if we can cut, we can also add it again. So it's reversible, no?
But you have to add, I mean, there's so many possibilities to add.
Yeah, but still, I probably there's as far as it's non-zero probability, it's still reversible, right?
Okay, I guess you can do that. I'll
Yeah.
have to think harder about it, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Okay. Anyone else?
I have
Okay,
a
Lee, yeah, go ahead.
yeah question as well. So very nice
And
talk.
also,
Oh wait, yeah.
sorry, but can I finish it to add? And also, like, if we have the detailed balanced condition, if we use a Metropolis-Hastings algorithm, isn't it reversible? That's how I studied.
I think when it's reversible, you get the detailed balance, but I'm just not sure about the reversible move in this.
I see.
So
Yeah.
anyway, but
Yeah. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, the Lee, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, what very nice talk. I think mainly some technical questions. I mean, clarification questions. One thing. So you were talking about the tweak move, which is like cutting off and growing a one branched tree. If I understood it correctly, you're considering the situation you have 1D space and then the cut is static, like in the middle. What is that one branch tree like? I mean, because every time you cut, you do always have another node coming out, right? Or do you just mean that you shrink the like wavelet type coefficients or something on those nodes? Could you clarify a little bit?
Yeah, I didn't. Can you like explain your question again? So
So I was just thinking that every time you cut a node, you inevitably have two children, right?
yeah. So right now, what happened is that even when it comes to a single like adding a single node or not, so it's all like about the internal node. So the internal
Oh,
node
I
will
see.
have two like uh, external node by default. But if it decides to split, then sort of we add one internal node here, then it will have children
Oh, I
structure.
see. So
Yeah.
if a child is a leaf, you don't count it as a
Yeah,
node
yeah. Right now,
or
that movement is
structure.
all about internal node. That's a
Yeah.
good question. Yeah, I was
Okay.
also confused at
Thanks.
first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, I guess, I understand that for the theoretical derivation, some kind of a simplification is necessary. But for tree type MCMC, I think a lot of the challenge comes from the fact that when you have more than one variable, like there are just,
yeah, yeah,
exponentially
yeah,
combinatorially many
yeah,
possibilities of
yeah,
cutting at different steps, and
yeah,
the posterior is extremely multimodal, and
yeah,
good mixing
yeah.
becomes
Right,
very
right. Yeah.
difficult. So, do you
Yeah.
have thoughts and comments on that, like
Yeah,
how?
I think you made a
Yeah.
very good point about the like the posture is like multimodal. Like that's the biggest issue. Actually, we really desired to show the result on the multimodality, but we could not. So, but at least one thing good is that if for the lower bound thing, the sad scenario, like if it does not work on the one dimension, then it will also not work for the like higher dimension. But we also want to show the upper bound, right? Good story. And so we wanted to like, but if we think about those two techniques, like canonical path or the like drift condition thing, their key assumption is the unimodality toward the like the true model there. And as you mentioned, like why we have this like a multimodality here, because the like the likelihood is essentially defined by using the a partition, but like our movement happens in the tree space, and that really complicates everything. And so what we tried was to kind of apply some equivalent relationship so that like it can resolve that kind of unimodal like multimodality problem. But what we did not figure out was how then we can actually define the movement within equivalent classes, equivalent trees, and or between equivalent classes, and that was really challenging to us. And if you have any good idea, we would love to receive any feedback about it. Yeah. Yeah, very good
Thank
comment.
you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other question?
So
Answer?
I
Oh, yeah, Ed. Yeah, go ahead.
no, so related to what Lee was talking about, I mean, our biggest problem with Bayesian CART was that we would run it and it would very quickly get to a mode, a local mode, but it would get completely stuck in that local mode and it couldn't move. And so, I mean, will the Twiggy fix that? I mean, what we figured was that once you've grown a tree, there was just too small a chance that you would go all the way back to the top node and then come down again. So that was hard to do. So we just kept restart. The way we recommended people use it is just restart it, a million times and you get a million trees. And that's what we were doing. But
I don't know if I can say something, add something to the discussion. So, I guess, regarding the reversibility, so the proposal we have is kind of like unique because if there is like a node that we haven't captured, we just
right.
grow the shortest, twig to capture that node, and that's kind of unique. So there's like one unique move, and then what we suggest in a reversal is to remove the entire twig, not only one node at a time. So it's not like we're growing trees into the node, but we're growing a single twig, which is like uniquely the shortest path towards that node. So I think now that we will have, I think the reversible, I have to kind of think about it more carefully, but I think that we need to be careful about having that kind of proposal, which gives that kind of like unique path. I remember thinking about that at some point. And then with the question of mixing, we did the univariate case, obviously in multiple dimensions, it's going to be even more challenging. But the purpose of this paper was even in one dimension, the mixing can be bad if you start somewhere where the tree that you start with is kind of maybe you're just a root node and your signals are deep. So you would have to go through layers of noise to capture the signals, and then you just can't do that, right? It's the local moves won't be able to do that. So we demonstrate that aspect. Obviously, in 2 dimensions, it's going to be even, more pronounced. So we thought about it, but this paper is really about just kind of one of the mixing issues of Bayesian CART, which we demonstrate in 1 dimension.
No, wonderful. Thank you. No, and now I understand actually. So if you have a twig, there are no side nodes that you have to worry about. So you're just doing one all the way down.
Yeah,
So then
exactly.
it would
Just
be
one all the way
reversible.
down. Yeah.
It's the problem is when you have two children and stuff like that, then it gets crazy. Okay,
Yeah.
great. And kudos to you guys. This is a really hard problem. So very well done. I mean, very brave to tackle this.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay, so then let's thank our speaker again and happy holidays to everyone. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Jungeum. Okay. See you soon.
Good.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Congratulations. Yeah.